Positive connotation. Here where we are, we think of power as something to do greater good with. We don't think of it in the way of a negative power, but when you have the responsibility of power or influence, we've seen people do it very well. And actually
art has had the power of making the things that we use in our daily lives. So this too is very important, I think.
And literature is another way of imagining power. It's an alternative to the power that we experience in the real, in real time and real space. And writers are able to manipulate power at will, given the skills that they're trained with and the gift of writing that they're given, I suppose. And what they do with that is of continued interest to me. How people react to oppression and how they express the different pathways out of repression is very interesting to me, both in the Italian context and in the US-American context specifically.
Is the issue of language and power. And so, three main, in French we would say axes, or I don't know how you say that in English, axe, but it would be how you use power, in your relationship, in gender relationship, for instance, in class, relationship, and whether we talk about gender, or class, language, is going to play, an important part.
Knowledge is power. Knowledge and expertise in the field of accounting and auditing nowadays is crucial to knowing how to do your job properly, and especially with this climate of mistrust and fraud and wrongdoings, you want to be sure that you are knowledgeable of what the constant changes in laws and guidelines are, and the responsibility of dealing with them in the event of a lawsuit, and also to protect your reputation.
What I say about that is that, to me, power is being listened by students without obligating them. So I think that power is something that you have inside without having to impose it. So it means that for a teacher, power is having all your students in class happy. They don't feel time is going to pass, and that they come to class happy, that they study because they think that studying a language is something that can improve their capacity to interact with people outside.
I think art's kind of art as we intend it today, that is what an artist does. It can have a very powerful message. I think that art can make a big difference. If we think about, I'm thinking about events like a couple of years ago, there was the movement in Turkey where it was kind of like a performance, or we call it a performance, where people would just stop and read wherever they were. They would sit down or they would stand up as a form of protest. So I think that in that ways, in many senses, art has power. Art, I don't know, in terms of therapy, it can have the power to heal. It can have the power to help people express themselves. If we think about those kinds of power.
Those are very intertwined. So when I think about power, what comes to mind first, to be honest, is my experience, and then from my experience I connect that to my scholarly interests, and those two are very intertwined as well. So as the son of Italian immigrants to the United States, I can say that space is the first word that comes to mind when I think about power. The reason that my parents left Italy had to do with spatial concerns related to power, my father's a sculptor, and the space that he needed to create and exhibit his art was not available to him in Italy, but it's a mental space as well as a physical space because of the way that people define and constrain their definitions of art. So that brought our family to a large American city where there was a lot of physical space available to exhibit his artwork. And I grew up in these large spaces with a lot of public art.
If, for example, Hitler, was he an effective leader? Well, yes, he was an effective leader. Now, did he lead us down the right path? So, in my opinion, he was abusive. He was an abusive leader, and there's many pieces of that. I think people, because of the abuse of power around the world, probably have more of a negative than a positive. And even in our classroom, I don't know so much use the word power as I do influence, but to me, in a positive way, having power, the ability to influence, can be very positive if you have someone who's responsible and cares more about the greater good than his or her own, I would say, self-interest.
And if, for instance, I take French studies, one of my main areas of interest is French literature of Maghrebi origin. And here, language is very interesting because these French citizens, French writers, of Maghrebi origin, are going to use language, French mainly, which used to be the language of the colonizer.
For you, so this might be a little bit wandering, but thinking about movements like pop art or a figure like Andy Warhol and the power that art has had on fashion, on our own daily habits, on the way we look at things, or on aesthetics in the world, I think that you could say that yes, that art can have a very power. That art is power in a certain sense. Maybe not the kind of power that violently subjugates people or that subjugates people with force, but the way it kind of invades our lives on that sort of perceptive level, I think that's a very art is power, I guess, in that sense as well.
Power in terms of space. It became very important to my family because we were not a wealthy family to provide their children, me and my brothers, with cultural capital since we couldn't have financial resources. We've surrounded ourselves with books and with literature, and I think that's where my interest in literature began, and how my scholarly career as a professor of literature started to unfold.
And so the idea of using power in a positive way has become more of a commitment of mine than before. So in that sense, it's changed in the idea of power as abusive versus power as something that is positive.
There are a lot. I mean, if you study French language, you will realize that there are a lot of words, from Berber language or Arabic language that have become, commonplace, in French language. And it's how, you're going to create, how these writers, are going, to create, a new language, an hybrid language, as a form, of resistance, which, although, I don't really like, this term because it's a buzzword, but as a form of resistance towards the dominant language, which is the French language, as it is, sustained, for instance, by the Académie Française, the French.
Finally, I think the power of art to shape our visual experience is a very powerful thing. Whether we think about it in the Western world, from perspective, from the whole idea of illusionism as being a big pictorial value, or just even the way our buildings are designed or whatever, this shaping of visual experience, I think, is a very, very important power to have too.
People outside. So power has nothing to do, to me, with the success you get in the life. but with the happiness you can get inside yourself. That's what I think is power, first of all, for a teacher. And so what else can I say? I am not a politician, so I am not a company leader, and to me, really, power is connected to culture. So any person who has a culture is powerful. That's power to me.
Okay, so one of the things that we are very focused on here is grounding individuals in their own goodness, and then taking that goodness and influencing others, or taking that power from within to influence the world in a positive way.